You can take the children, but you leave me my monkey.
How's it going, guys? I'm Bagel the Bat, and I'm currently obsessed with weird musical biopics. They definitely used to be more of a trend about 20 years ago, but this past holiday season we had two of them coming out at the same time. A Complete Unknown with Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan, and Better Man with, Jono Davies as Robbie Williams? Now, as you can probably tell by my harsh, nasally accent, I'm an American, and back when I originally saw the trailer for this movie in theaters, I was mostly confused and skeptical. I had very little exposure to his music as a doughy American kid. I used to watch a lot of music videos on VH1 back in the day because I've always been just that cool, but I was only vaguely familiar with Robbie Williams. He's a huge pop star in the UK, but never really made the transition fully to the United States. We were too busy jamming out to NSYNC and working at Enron. Robbie did have some bangers though, with two of my favorites being Rock DJ and Millennium. If neither of those rings a bell to you, he also performed a cover of Beyond the Sea for the end of Finding Nemo. So flash forward to 25 years later, I'm in my mid-30s and seeing that not only was a movie studio making a musical biopic of him, but the gimmick was that he was being replaced by a CGI humanoid chimpanzee. And of course, my first thoughts were A, Andy Serkis is gonna sue somebody for venturing onto his turf, and B, there's no way this movie can be any good, because on the surface it looks incredibly dumb, or at the very least like an incredibly weird idea. Doing a biopic as a vanity project is one thing, especially while the musician in question is still alive, but using a CGI chimp as a body double just seems like the studio wants to set money on fire. However, I kept an eye on the public response, and I saw enough positive reviews from folks online that made me want to give it a shot, so I did. I went to my local theater to check it out. What was the story, and more importantly, was it any good? Better Man follows the story of British pop star Robbie Williams from his early days as a working class kid in England to his rise to superstardom. So even though I didn't really have a solid idea of who he was, the premise for the story itself was pretty straightforward. The plot gets into many of the cliches you'd expect to see from a musical biopic: band infighting, drunken escapades, drug abuse, family issues, that kind of thing. But what really shocked me getting into it was how balanced everything was. It wasn't boring, it was well-paced, it was actually heartwarming. Initially, I was concerned that the whole CGI chimp gimmick would have been too distracting, like that it felt too silly and would have made it difficult to get into the story. But no, you get used to it after about 5 minutes. It sounds stupid, but yeah, it's true. I was legitimately surprised at how solid the visual effects work was on the CGI, especially with the amount of care they put into the facial acting in his eyes and expressions. Part of Robbie's public persona is based around being outlandish and mugging to the camera, so yeah, they delivered on that front. The use of CGI almost certainly started as a marketing gimmick for sure, but the movie shows how it's more meant to be how Robbie sees himself, that he's less evolved than other people. That mentality informs a lot of his behavior throughout the film, but they don't excuse it. The core of Robbie's arc as a character always tends to boil down to the same issue: self-worth. He idolizes his father's love of crooning legends like Frank Sinatra and wants to emulate them to be worthy of his dad's attention. But in reality, his father is a selfish jerk who decided to pursue his own dreams of fame. He abandoned his family for years on end, and only showed up for him once Rob became Robbie and was famous already. The best support system Robbie has is his grandmother, Nan. She urges him not to base his value as a person on how others see him, but it clearly takes him a long time to actually learn that lesson and to unlearn the toxic messages from his father. At the start of the movie, Robbie is an obnoxious little turd who clearly loves being in the spotlight, but it's more that it's the only way he knows how to get positive attention from other people. Much of his big personality is a front to cover up his own self-worth problems. He routinely struggles with anxiety, depression, and imposter syndrome by self-medicating in increasingly destructive ways. If you've seen Bojack Horseman, then these kinds of story beats will feel pretty familiar to you. The emotional moments feel earned, and there really isn't much in the way of glamorizing that kind of rock and roll lifestyle in the way you'd expect them to. Fantasy dreams of success quickly shift into claustrophobic nightmares of what he feels he has to do to survive. He's become a caged animal performing endlessly and can't escape the environment he's gotten trapped in. It's obviously destroying Robbie from the inside out, and most of his closest relationships are jeopardized because of his own actions. And I really appreciate that about it. He has to stew in those consequences, but it's ultimately Robbie's responsibility to get himself out of it. Many of the pivotal moments in his life and career have their own interludes, which, as a musical, yeah, you have to go that route. But they're all used in a very entertaining and thematically appropriate way. The real showstopper of the movie, without a doubt, is Rock DJ. It's so cool. I love this sequence so much. And you can really tell how much planning went into doing all the choreography for it. I looked up the behind the scenes for this sequence, and dang, they actually closed off Regent Street, one of the busiest streets in London, for this shoot. They had to book it 18 months in advance as the British Crown owns it, but twist, 2 days before they were supposed to shoot, Queen Elizabeth passed away. I know, so rude. Their production insurance didn't cover the death of a monarch because of course it doesn't, so they lost the money for that and had to raise it all over again to shoot the sequence 5 months later. But if that's not dedication, I don't know what is. So as much as I'm talking it up, am I surprised this movie failed? No, not really. I'm not trying to sound mean, but no, I'm not surprised at all. Better Man was in development starting in February 2021. Director Michael Gracie, who also directed The Greatest Showman, recorded a series of conversations with Robbie getting into his life story. They didn't even plan on making a movie from them, but Gracie found them so interesting that they went for it anyway. Many of those recordings were actually used as the narration throughout the film. The majority of the funding and filming was done in Melbourne, Australia, thanks to producer Offset and Film Victoria, two government programs that provide grants for productions to shoot there. To break even, they would have had to make around $300 million in global sales, which is twice the budget of $110 million, plus whatever they were realistically spending on marketing. The premise for Better Man was already incredibly specific, let alone the audience that would have been likely to check it out, meaning longtime Robbie Williams fans. A lot of the most popular musicals that get released these days all tend to have a few things in common. They either have a ton of star power, are adaptations linked to a pre-existing property, or are made by Disney. You know, once they finally allow Lin-Manuel Miranda to have more fish heads and natural sunlight. No, get back in your cage, Lin. You can come out when we need more songs for Moana 3. And sure, Robbie Williams does have a ton of fans. He's one of the best-selling British artists of all time with the awards to prove it. I'm not debating that. It's just that most of them live in the UK, Europe, and Australia. That notoriety doesn't always translate to popularity overseas, especially in a market as fickle as the United States. But am I, a filthy, ignorant American, glad I saw it? Absolutely! And I'd see it again. My husband and I had a great time. To me, this movie will hopefully pick up steam once it goes onto Netflix, or some kind of streaming thing. I don't know. Choose wisely, bidding wars. If they had released it as a streaming exclusive, I personally think it would have done a lot better, or at least something to build up more positive word of mouth. Basically, what I'm saying is I really appreciate the way this movie tells its message. It gets into how much anxiety and imposter syndrome can hold you back or make you second guess your own success. And personally, I found that to be an incredibly relatable message. If you're a creative, you probably will too. People are being snide about it on social media, which yeah, no surprise there, but that's a shame, because in my opinion, this movie absolutely has an audience, and hopefully it'll gain one as long as people are willing to give it a shot like I was. As things are now though, I'm comfortable calling this an immediate cult classic. And by using my absolutely not biased grading rubric of this was a good time because it's sad, gay, and has disco music, I'm giving Better Man a thumbs up of approval. If you're looking to do a fun musical double feature movie night with friends or just by yourself, try watching Better Man with one of my personal favorites, Phantom of the Paradise, directed by Brian De Palma from 1974, because if it's good enough to inspire Daft Punk to start a band, then it's good enough for me. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Did you see Better Man? What did you think of it? Tell me in the comments down below, and please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. Thanks. Bye.